Hello everyone. If you're joining, please let me know in the chat where you're joining from. Uh, just we'll start in a few minutes or in a few seconds. Thank you very much. I can see Saisha from India, Ismail from Sudan, um, Bushra, Nimi from Bangladesh. Oh, and we have someone from Scotland. Um, so Again, if you're joining, please introduce yourself. Let me also know your field of study or what you're planning to study. Um, just to know who is here and someone from Peru. Great. Um, Also, let me know your field of study, just to know an idea who's here, um, and then we'll proceed with the session. So waiting to read or waiting to see what you're all planning to study in the UK. Perfect. I've seen Masters in Food Security. Great. The reason why I'm telling you this is because I might be using examples from your field or some universities from your field, so it might be beneficial putting that down. It makes this live session more engaging when I can use examples that are relevant to all of you. Yeah, Animi is a nutritionist applying for Global Public Health Nutrition, London School of London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Yes. Chester and Westminster. HR with an interest in career change, as you did to human rights. Perfect. Um, um, Masters in AI. Um, yeah. Perfect. Okay. So, and then, perfect. So we're going to start. And before we start, I'll make an introduction. My name is Samuel, and I got the Chevening Scholarship in the year 2019, 2020. So, yeah, we were the pandemic Cheveners. So we had just finished our sessions, like lectures. So it's only the our thesis that we wrote during the lockdown. And I studied at the University of Reading, where I did an MSc in agriculture and development. Before that, I had a bachelor of. I graduated with a bachelor of commerce degree, specializing in finance from the University of Nairobi in Kenya, where I come from. And I had worked in 4 banks in 3 years in business development functions. And then around 2016, when or 2015, when the SDGs were being framed. Remember, before then, we had the Millennium Development Goals that were pushed from 2000 to the year 2015. And once they expired, there was that opportunity. Global leaders, and they were coming together to come up with new goals for the globe, and that's how SDGs were framed. And it was so interesting. Obviously, right now I have a different view about the SDGs, having read so much, and and criticized some of them and how they were framed. But that SDG discussion is what led me to think, obviously, there's more to life than sitting in a bank and making money for a few boys somewhere. And rather than going and dealing with some of the challenges that the globe was experiencing. And I was coming from a place that had unemployment, had great agricultural potential, had great potential in the youth, since over two-thirds of the population was young people, but yet the country was still facing food insecurity. So that's how my career transition started, and I started thinking that I need to do something different in my life. If you're thinking that you can't do that because probably you're in your 20s, I did that when I was 30. So 2018, I just turned 30. So that tells you it's never too late to make those decisions. Because at the end of the day, you'd rather have a few more years which are fruitful, doing something that you value, doing something that is fulfilling, than having so many years waking up, doing a job you don't like, doing things that you don't feel like they're adding value to. Yeah, I mean, most of the things we do add value, but obviously there are things that you feel like there's that convergence between you making money and and probably also leaving a mark or impact in your field. So, in this session, what we are going to do, because of the deadline, the approaching deadline of the Chevening application, we're just going to look at how to polish your essays, and from that, I'll also tell you from my story on how I transitioned from finance to food systems. I'm currently just finished my second year. Started my third year or fourth. My program is 4 years PhD, so I've done two more at the University of Greenwich, and I look at food systems nutrition. Ideally, I look at geography, where people live, and the connection between where people live and the kind of food they can access, and how we can improve geography or how we can improve food environments to affect people's health. So with that, I'll also will this is the structure of the session. We'll be looking at each of the four essays. I'll look at how to introduce each of the four essays. I'll give you an example of a good um, leadership example or networking example. And then at the end of it all, then we'll also be looking at how to conclude your essays. And I'll also be giving feedback from I've been doing this for a couple of years, reading people's essays, because I feel like I could help people become their best versions. So over the years, I've seen how the people who get the Chevening scholarship, what do they write, and people who don't get it, what kind of essays they write. So I'll also be giving you snippets of what is not a good essay. Um, so when it comes to the leadership essay, it's a leadership and influence essay. So that means you need to show that you're a leader and that you have influence. And then before you even think about the introduction, because people jump into the introduction, I would rather focus on writing the examples or the leadership essay itself without thinking of the introduction. And then once you've written your three examples, can you then think of what is the common theme that I can use to introduce my essays? So you don't start with the introduction. That's what I would say. Just first of all, think of the examples. What is the strategy? What strategy would you use to think of your leadership examples? Number one, I would go and list like five things or even 10 things I've done in my life that demonstrate I'm a leader. Let's say you started a program in church or in your local community. Let's say you solved a problem at your workplace. Let's say you've done something marvelous in your family. I know someone who got the Chevening scholarship, and they wrote how they're a leader because they lost both parents when they were really young, and they had written how they had to step up for the siblings and what they did in the entire process. So if you list like 10 of them and then list the best three, and then start thinking, how can I structure the best three now to tell a story? So how do you do this? There is no shortcut for the leadership and influence essay rather than using the STAR approach. A lot of people write a lot of so many words, and those words do not answer any of the questions or what is being required of you. So the only way to make sure that you're saying things that answer the question is using the STAR approach, which is really common even in interview questions. When you've gone for an interview, when they are called situational interview questions, tell us of a time when you did this, and that's a procedure. So what is the STAR approach? So the STAR approach is follows S is for situation, um, T is for task, and A is for action, and R is for results. And sometimes people add an L for lessons. So, what does that mean? That means that you need to your example. You need to ask yourself, every sentence I am writing, where does it fit in the STAR approach? So, think of a problem you solved. Before I give you a good example, I'll also give you what is not good. I don't want to use bad, but let me just say what is not good. So I remember reviewing an essay of someone in HR, and they were just giving their job description, what they do. I train people on these things. I train people on these things. I do all these things, thinking that they're answering the question, and they are a HR business partner. So that's not the way. You don't give your job description. Rather, focus on one problem that you solved in that role, and then use a STAR approach to explain it. For example, and be very specific. I mean specific. For example, I would go it as follows. In 2020, as the human resources business partner for X Limited, a company I've been working for the last 5 years or 10 years, there was a challenge of high staff turnover. So, can you see how that sentence has started the example directly? You have not said, oh, since 2010, I've been working for this company. No. In 2020, as a HR business partner of X Limited, we were facing a challenge of high staff turnover. That's the problem. And then, can you give one more sentence about details about the problem? What does the problem cause? So the high staff turnover is when you have a lot of employees just coming and working for a few years and then leaving, and that means a high cost of hiring, training new employees all the time. You have new employees all the time because the ones that have been there are not staying, and that means there's a problem in the company. So you need to qualify what you just explained, high staff turnover, and say this affected the company in terms of cost of retraining new staff and hiring, and now you've put in the context and now added more details to the problem, and then from there, task. What were you required to do? Then you now that sentence, you now go and say, as a HR business partner, I was required to come up with strategies that would help reduce the staff turnover and essentially also reduce the costs to the company. So then you've said the task. You don't need to explain anything else after that. Then go to action. So when you're giving your leadership and influence example, make sure most of your word count, you use it in giving the actions. So, for example, in this case, and I'm just thinking about it right now, I would think of, first of all, I approached my CEO with a proposal to do a survey on what issues employees felt could be improved or what they felt wasn't working for them. And also, we also started doing exit interviews, or proposed the proposal also had exit interviews for employees who are leaving the company. So why does you saying you approach your CEO add value to your essay? It shows, because if your CEO approved, you've already demonstrated influence, because not everyone approaches their bosses and their bosses agree to that plan. So that's the reason why putting it there shows you're influential. And then the other thing is you've taken the initiative. That's leadership. You're not saying I took the initiative. Don't use such words. Don't use words like I took initiative. No, 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 no. Just say what you did directly. Let us, whoever is reading the essays, let us conclude this is a leader from when we read your examples. In fact, what we say is show, don't tell. So, and then say your boss approved the plan, and then say how probably you involve other employees. First of all, you came up with a draft, then you sent it to them, then they said you could change a few questions here and there, and then say how you sent the survey to all the employees, and probably also how you promoted to make sure that every employee or most employees responded to the survey, and then move ahead and say how you got the results, you analyzed the results, and then from that you're able to come up with strategies, such as one of the things was probably things to do with training, opportunities for growth, or maybe reimbursements, or maybe pay, or all those kind of things that make people leave companies or their places of work. And then, so the solutions you'll give will be connected to what you gave as a problem, because sometimes what we have is people giving us results, but the results do not connect to the problem they gave initially. So then from there, one of the key things that people forget is if you've been recognized because of that, what you did, either you were promoted, either you got recognized, then you need to put it there. And you need to put it there as the last sentence of the example. Due to the success of this initiative, I was promoted or I was recognized as employee of the year. So it's a humble brag saying, I've been recognized as a leader. So, and this is why I tell most of the Africans who have that President Obama's Young African Leadership Initiative or Mandela Washington, when you give your examples, if you're a fellow, Yali fellow or Mandela Washington fellow, I keep on asking people, why were you selected? And then they have no idea why I was selected. I'm like, there's something you have done in your life that led to your selection. So make sure you use it in your example and then connect it and say at the end, due to the success of this initiative, I was selected for the. In fact, don't say Mandela Washington, just say, or Yali, just say President Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative. Put it that way, President Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative, because it shows, wow, young African leaders or Mandela Washington Fellowship. Yeah, that's the end of the example. Don't add any more details. Just look at how most of the words I've used are actually describing actions, not in the situation, not in the task, not in the results. It is the actions. If you did something in a group, please avoid using we a lot of the times and focus on what was your contribution to the group, your individual contribution to the group. For example, some of the examples will also mean you delegated duties to the group members. That delegation shows leadership. Some of these things would mean if you're starting an initiative in the community, that would mean approaching community leaders, approaching these community leaders, setting up meetings. Make sure you give details. Did you write letters to them? Did you set up a meeting with them? Did you write an email? How did you do a phone call? If you use social media, make sure you also specify what platform you used. For example, let's say you're mobilizing volunteers. Say I mobilized volunteers through Facebook, and initially we had 3, and from our engagement on social media or on Facebook, we were able to increase our volunteers from 3 to 15. That's influence. You've influenced 12 people to join you. So these are the kind of how you fine tune your essays to give to stand out. I want to end the leadership example at that point and focus now on the introduction bit of it and then go to the conclusion. So let's say, in my case, I used examples. One is when I started a mentorship program in my community, and that was mobilizing people, university young professionals, university students, young professionals to go back to their schools where they went to schools to motivate students or to give talks, which expanded to also supporting needy students. And another example I gave was actually on community gardening in schools, where children could learn how to grow food and also contributing to food security in schools, like growing vegetables. Another example was solving community. I didn't use leadership examples from workplace, either because I felt I had done so much in the community, and the context is don't feel like if you haven't done so much in the community. Just to let you know, for me, at the age of 28, I had run for member of parliament in my constituency. So there are a lot of things I had done for the community while I was getting into politics. So that's the reason why my examples were more community. And before I go into details, I would like to tell you, try to use a diverse examples. So, for example, try a mixture of 2 workplace and 1 community, or 2 community examples and 1 from your workplace. But if you feel like you have 3 uh, community examples which are so impactful, use them. What I wouldn't want is someone, or not me, but what I would really suggest is it looks good when when you show leadership in different contexts. Like, I'm a leader at my place of work, and I'm also a leader out there. So the reason I'm giving you the kind of examples I gave is to get you now to how do you introduce your essays. Um, so how I introduced my essays was I kept on saying that what does leadership mean to me? So leadership to me meant identifying community problems, assembling teams because you can't solve them alone, and then crafting solutions and then mobilizing people to now tackle the challenges. So, and that was like more of my introduction in although the exact words are not, those are not the exact words. That tells you that all the three examples I gave in my leadership essay were about that narrative: identifying a community problem and then assembling teams because I can't do it alone, and then going ahead and working with this team to find solutions, and which meant action. So that's the reason why I keep on saying don't start with the introduction. Look at the flow of your essays, then think, how can I introduce them? So a lot of people have used quotes. A lot of people quotes by Mandela. Remember, you can have thousands of different quotes what leadership is. People talk about vision. People talk about mobilizing. I mean, so for me, I wouldn't want to go into the details on how to do it, but also try to make sure that you're not misusing your word count by saying to me leadership is this and this. No. Just go to the context. What does leadership mean based on the examples you'll give down there? And then the other thing I would say is the conclusion. The conclusion is really important. And think of Chevening because they're looking for the cream of the cream in every country. What does that mean to you? And what does this opportunity mean to you in terms of leadership? So to do this, you need to understand um, what Chevening is. So Chevening organizes events for scholars um, on various things, climate change, hackathons on business stuff. Um, they visit houses of parliament in England, Wales, and Scotland. Um, and a lot of those things happen. And also, so think of what does in your field. Think of what will Chevening do. So I keep on saying, conclude the essay you've written. So if you're writing an essay on leadership, think of concluding a leadership essay. So I would say, what does Chevening aim, or will Chevening do for you? So I would go for one sentence. As a Chevening scholar, I am I will engage with the Chevening community to develop my leadership skills in order to contribute to solutions to food security in Kenya, Nigeria. Don't say my country. My country is two words. Saying your country will actually be one word, assuming your country is one word. But what I'm saying is try to be as specific as possible, and remember you are concluding a leadership essay. In case you're joining and you have any question, please hold those questions. I'll answer all your questions at the end of the session. I want now to move forward to the networking essay. And the networking essay is basically looking for people who can initiate professional relationships or professional networks, and they can benefit from those networks, or the people they lead can benefit from those networks. So it's an essay that I feel like every time I review essays, and sorry, I'm not reviewing essays this year, so don't approach me. I've been having a very busy schedule. But when I review essays all the time, most of the challenges coming from networking essay, it's because people don't understand it. So you need to understand that Chevening is looking to have an idea of how do you network. So how do you engage people? And remember, they're also looking for someone who initiates those professional relationships and how they benefit from them professionally. And also, how do they keep those networks active? So, for example, one of the if you look at again, I'll go to the examples before you think of the introduction. So one of the things I like is, have you ever gone for a conference? Have you ever gone for a retreat? Have you ever initiated a conversation with someone in public transport, and that conversation led to professional growth, or an opportunity, someone letting you know of an opportunity somewhere? Those are the kind of very specific examples. And one of the tips I tell people, think of people, places, and time. Very specific. Say one person you met, say how you met, and you must show that you're the one who initiated the professional relationship, and also give the context, people, places, and time, and the year, all the time. And what I mean by the year is the what I mean by time is the year, not giving the date and the month. That's just the year. So, for example, let's say in Kenya, I know there's a lawyers go for this law society conference, LSK. So, and let's say there are a lot of speeches that are given, and let's say there's someone speaking about, let's say, something to do with um, I'm thinking of, let's say, uh, something to do, one specialization of law, let's say human rights, you know, and you'd say that someone inspired you. You have to be very specific and say, in 2021, I attended the annual LSK conference for advocates in, in Nyali, Mombasa, or wherever, and then say one of the speakers was Professor, Doctor, or Mr. X, or Mrs. X, or Miss Y, who's a lawyer specializing in human rights or something. And in his address, I was inspired by his approach to human rights and describe that approach. Like I was inspired by his approach of ABCD in terms of handling human rights issues. So afterwards, I approached him. Can you see, after his speech, I approached him, and I was able to get his contacts, and either say you requested him to be your mentor, or you asked him a very direct question, that started this conversation. And then and then you can add a sentence of, we've been keeping in touch since then via regular catch up calls, or maybe monthly coffee meetings. And just last maybe a few months ago, or don't use a few months ago, but say in maybe in July this year, when there was a placement internship opening in their company, he was able to refer me, and I applied, and I was successfully hired. Successfully hired means you also went through the process, like, you were interviewed and everything. So it's not like it was just given to you. That's what I mean. I was successfully hired. So that's an example of how networking is. Can you see it's very specific? So where did you, this Mr. or this lawyer, where you met them, the conference you met, and how you approach them? Those are key things that show how you network. You're also telling us how you keep your networks. So can you see here, it's regular coffee or monthly coffee meetings, or it could be regular calls. It could also be, maybe probably you also wanted to do a legal free, whatever, legal camp, free legal or aid or camps. And then you're looking for people who could volunteer, or let's say you wanted to do a medical camp in your community, and then there was someone you knew, you had met in a previous conference, and you approached them, and they were able to also volunteer and also come with more nurses, or suggest more doctors to come for your medical camp. So it's more of how you've networked, but remember, it's very specific. So some people would, a bad essay, and sorry, now I'm saying a bad essay instead of saying an essay that is not good, says, I go for these conferences, and in these conferences I meet people. These people have helped me. You've not told us which conferences you go to. You've not told us which people you meet and how you benefited. So for me, I'm picking one conference, yes, and I'm picking one individual, because even if you go for a conference and talk to 50 people over 2 days or 3 days, there is only one who can qualify as outstanding. There is only one. So, and I would really recommend you using that one, not all of them. So use one. So again, a lot of people, there's a thin line how they approach leadership examples and the networking example, because some people sway in and start talking about leadership stuff. No, no, no. Please focus and talk about how you initiate professional relationships and how they have helped you. One of the most overlooked ways of networking is social media. And honestly, if you use that example well, it can work for you. LinkedIn, Facebook. So you could even start by, when I was researching on Chevening essay, I started looking for the alumni in my country, and I was able to see Mr. X or Miss X, who's a Chevening scholar, from the year whatever, and probably they're in their field. Remember to give details. Then explain how you inboxed them or sent them a private message. What was your request? And just to say, don't send a, don't say, I know most people send a hi, which is something for me. I really don't think people who just send a hi are serious. So most of them will end up as spam messages if you're not connected to that someone, so they'll never see it. But in a world where everyone is busy, I don't know who is ready to answer a hi on Facebook. So, just a tip to digress a little. If you want to approach someone, just say, "Hi, my name is so and so. I was looking for people who benefited from Chevening scholarship, and I saw your name. So, and then make your request in the same message." So that's how people will respond to your messages. So going back, and then you'll explain how that someone responded, and probably they're able to review your essays and you improved your writing. That still is a networking example. People are not able to use such examples, but obviously don't overuse the issue of social media, because again, for me, I would look for ways I've networked and have benefited me, and then I would rank them and pick the top three. And if I had not said this before, I would really recommend you giving three examples for your leadership and three examples for your networking. Why is it so? Because two would mean you're writing too much, and probably you're also writing irrelevant stuff. But when you write three, it's just the right the and don't use four, because four, it would mean then there are too many, and because of word count, you're not able to give us details of the examples you're giving. So three for me is what I feel is perfect or suitable for me. So when it comes to networking, again, remember, um, the title of that person is really important. So don't just say I met Peter. Tell us who Peter is. You know, shine with their titles. If this is a CEO of a big company or a director, or the minister in your government, or the governor in your state, or your county, or even the president of your country, the president of your your national assembly, or speaker, those titles really work. You know, because the Chevening essay tell one single story. So the fact that you're approaching senior people also shows how confident and how your networking is. You're telling Chevening, if you get this opportunity, you will use it in the right way, or you will take advantage of it to grow or to leverage your networks for your professional growth. Okay. Should you really use examples that are relevant to whatever you want to do? Probably not. That's Chevening doesn't really look into like how relevant those things are. As long as your story is adding up on how you network, that's what matters. But obviously, because all of us are networking within our circles and what we want to do in the future, then most likely you will use examples that are working, that would work for you. So or that examples that are relevant to your career. So in terms of conclusion for your networking essay, um before I go to the conclusion, let me just finalize on how to introduce it then. So, for me, I would really, based on how leadership has helped, sorry, how networking has helped you, is what I would really focus on. Thinking with this in mind, that Chevening is looking for people who can network and can benefit from these professional relationships. I would really focus on having an introduction that says, in my professional life, I have initiated or I've initiated professional relationships that have led to my career growth or benefited people who are close or people I was working with. That would mean the example you're going to give would show how you've grown professionally and also how people have benefited. For example, I gave the example of things like if you're running a free legal camp, and then there's a lawyer you met elsewhere, and they're able to send more volunteers to come and help. So, and maybe you ended up like helping more than 300 people in your community who had issues, legal issues. So although that could also be swayed towards the leadership, it tells you, it also says how you've networked and how that networking has led to your growth or how you benefited from that relationship. So the introduction again goes back to what is the common theme among the three examples you've given in your leadership example. So if it's about you benefiting, I would really have one sentence talking about how you initiate relationships, professional relationships, and how they've led to your professional growth. I keep using professional a lot because you have to think about it's professional relationships and professional growth. And then in terms of conclusion, this is where most people wobble a lot. For me, it's the easiest conclusion you'll ever have. So, who are you planning to network with in the UK? And also, when you go back to your country, and why, and for what purpose? Just that's what you need to answer in one sentence. So, for example, in my case, I wrote that as a Chevening scholar, I am planning to network with other scholars, with the faculty, the lecturers, professors in your department, and also with the Kenyan Chevening Alumni Network. That's our alumni organization as Kenyans, because there are other people obviously in your who have probably in the same field in your country, in the Chevening Scholarship. So what that would mean is you already know that net alumni organization exists. It's actually a bonus point. And then you'd say, I've listed, and this is not the list is not it's not that's not the end of the list. Of course, there are so many other organizations, other individuals you can network with, but I'm picking the main ones: other scholars, faculty, and the members of the Chevening Alumni Network. I don't know what they call it in your country. Just know there's an alumni organization in your country for Cheveners, and you can use that name. And why will you be networking with them? So it could be to in order to solve challenges in your field. So, for example, for me, to in order to contribute solutions to food security in Kenya, that's what I wrote. Because again, you are growing in order to influence people in your field and your field, so it's connected to your field and what you'll do in the future. That's the end of the networking example. And again, if you're joining and you have questions, I'll take questions at the end of the session. So keep if you have something pops up, just write it down, and then I'll take those questions later. I want now to move on to the studying in the UK essay, and this is one of the essays that also people struggle a lot, and it's one of the easiest, and I'll tell you why. So what you're supposed to do is ideally all these essays I'm talking about should have an introduction. That's a paragraph by itself. Even if that paragraph is one sentence, that's all right. And then each of the three examples should be in their own paragraphs. Don't use one example in two paragraphs. Just one example, one paragraph, and then have a conclusion paragraph, even if it's one sentence. So ideally, I'm looking for three three examples, three paragraphs, introduction and the conclusion, five paragraphs. If you understand what I mean by that. And then for the studying in the UK essay, one thing that you'll be required to do is justify why you want to study a postgraduate course in that field. And that should be your introduction. Here I'm starting with the introduction. You need to justify why do you want to study human rights? Why do you want to study food security? Why do you want to study AI? Why do you want to study business analytics? All that is the first paragraph, and it should be very easy. Why is it easy? Because you need to think of what are the challenges in your field, in your country, what are the challenges in your country in the context of that field? And then from there, that's where the motivation comes from. You can use statistics sparingly. Do not overuse statistics, and make sure you use the latest statistics. In my case, I used statistics from FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN, to explain the food insecurity in my country, in Kenya, that is, and then highlighting what are the causes of that food insecurity. Because then when you talk about the causes of food insecurity, they'll link to the programs and the modules you'll start explaining later. Remember, what you're going to study is going to impart skills, competencies, and knowledge that will now deal with the challenge you'll have explained in the introduction. So you'll or you can use, if you have local statistics from your ministry, sometimes they are the best, I think. I'm not very sure, I haven't checked what I wrote of late, but it could also be a used statistics from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. But anyway, use the latest statistics. um I would avoid using whatever brackets, and focus on integrated citation and say according to FAO 2024 FAO statistics, 60% of Kenyans are food insecure. And then you explain why are they. Is it issue to do with income? There is issue to do with then you continue as at now the second sentence. The main causes of this is low incomes. You can also discuss things like low agricultural productivity due to things to do with, let's say, drought, or if people do not have high quality seeds, all those kind of things, or maybe climate change. That means low rainfall, or climate change issues. You've explained the issues. Now, from there, and then you will now go to the third sentence and say, this has motivated me to pursue a postgraduate course in food security in order to contribute to solutions to food security in Kenya. Simple, three sentences, very direct to the point. So, if you want to study human rights, is there a report about human rights in your country that you can cite in the first sentence? And then move on and say, give a context, like the issue of human rights in your country, and then the third sentence, talk about how that has motivated you. This has motivated me to pursue an LLM in human rights, in order to, now you get your own words on how to explain that bit, because it's really important. So remember, that bit also will influence what you're going to write in your career plan. As I said, cheating essays tell a single cohesive story. So if you want to study global or public health nutrition, so you need to think of public health challenges or public health nutrition challenges in your country. And then from there, move on to what are the causes of these challenges, and then say what course you want to study. So there must be a connection between these challenges you've used there, and that should not be more than three sentences, and that's a paragraph by itself. From there, let's go to your courses. People, oh, sorry, there's this question. Some people, and I want to before I forget, people ask, should you list all the three courses at that point? No. For me, I generalize. What do you want to study? It's food security. A postgraduate course in food security, a postgraduate course in human rights, if it's LLM, international development. So put it into what's general, what would you refer to your field in a general way? And then the second paragraph, give your first program, your first choice of the university or program. Here I have a lot of issues, because um, go direct to the point. My first choice is MSc Food Security at the University of Reading. And you can even stop at that. That's your first sentence. And make sure all your sentences start, my first choice is, my second choice is, or my third choice is. And then from that, can you start just telling us why you selected that university? If you go to the Chevening website, and I'm sure because you are applying for a master's degree, where there's a lot of independent research you'll be able to undertake, you need to get this information by yourself. Every year, Chevening releases reports on what went wrong with my essays. They give a report, feedback, generalized, how people who were not who didn't go through, what was the issues with their essays. I think I went through last year's report, or last year but one. One of the things was people overuse rankings. Please, there's so many things you can talk about a university rather than ranking. Ranking right now doesn't add any bonus points to your essay. If you've added some ranking, for me, I would actually go and remove it. Do you know why? There's so many great things you can write about a university. For example, I would really look at how the course is delivered, mode of delivery, and how the course is examined. Those are two things, very distinct and very useful. The mode of delivery could be, let's say, there is some workshops, instead of the normal lectures, maybe the course has some seminars or some or some group work project. So what does a group project for me, and this is again, I'll explain this later because I'll go into this into more detail. When you give a reason, can you qualify it? So don't say the course appeals to me because it has a group project. So what? So what does having a group project mean? It means you'll be able to work in a team, and other than gaining, let's say, experiences from different countries, because obviously you'll be coming from different countries, you'll also develop your interpersonal skills and teamwork skills. Can you see that? So that bit of so what, people leave it so much. The other day, I was looking at essays for someone, and they had written they want to go to the University of Bristol, and they wanted to cite how Bristol is known for the women empowerment. It has a history of, a lot of agitation for women empowerment. And I said, so what? What does this mean to you? So you need to add a phrase at the end and say, what value does this mean to you? So, for example, I've said the issue of course delivery. The other one is mode of examination. So a course can be examined in various ways. You can have a closed door exam, you can be writing essays, those are the most common. But for others, they could be having also things like a placement in a real work organization, in a real organization. So you don't say this course appeals to me because it has a placement. So what? So again, you have to add the course appeals to me because it has a placement, and this will mean on top of the theoretical knowledge gained from lectures, I'll also gain real life, or I'll gain practical experience from working in these companies or these organizations. So these are the bits, because Chevening is looking for someone who has researched their courses. So if you just pick statements from the website and try and paste them in your essays, surely your essay will not stand out. So if you go to my blog, you'll see something I wrote. If you mention a module, which I really advocate mentioning a module, probably in two of your examples, or the first example of you are studying in the UK. So essay, mention a module, a really key module, and also remember to mention the professor who teaches it, the professor or the module convener. So for me, one of the modules I mentioned was agricultural project planning and management in developing countries. I said the course appeals to me because of the module agricultural project planning and management in developing countries, taught by Professor Srini. I think he was called Professor Srini. And this module will impart me with skills necessary, you know, to to what was it? To plan an agricultural project from inception to the end. You know all those challenges about project management. Maybe, yeah, I actually used agri-food projects in Kenya. So you need to qualify. Don't just say the course appeals to me because of module X taught by Professor Y. You need to say how that module will be important to you. In terms of, remember again, the challenges you mentioned. The challenges you mentioned at the introduction, because these modules are giving you skills to solve challenges you mentioned in the introduction of your studying the UK essay. So the other thing that I find is that just use two reasons, and I would really go for two academic reasons. So if you're doing something to do with lab work, and there are very special equipment, lab equipment in that university, I would really use that as an example. If you're doing something to do with the reason also I don't advocate for rankings is because they don't. For example, there are some of the top universities ranked top in the UK do not rank top in that field you're applying to. So if ranking is such important issue, then I would really expect people to be going for the top ranked university in that field. So that's the reason why, and just also to think it of it like this. Chevening also wants to distribute students to various universities. So if all of you used rankings and ended up in the top universities, what about the other universities? So that's another reason why I would really not advocate using rankings and focus on how a course is delivered, how a course is examined, a module, maybe. And when you mention a module, remember to mention also the convener or the professor. One example, two examples, two reasons for each of your university course, and link that to what you want to solve in your country. What skills are you trying to gain by selecting these modules, and how do those skills now, how will these skills help you solve the challenges you mentioned in the introduction? In terms of conclusion, I would really go, why do you want to study in the UK? So why do you want to study in the UK? And for me, I would really talk about studying in the UK will impart me with uh, world-class knowledge and competence on solving food insecurity challenge in Kenya. And prepare me for a leadership role in the future. Like very, very straight to the point. Very straight to the point. What does studying in the UK mean to you? So for me, and this is a question again, if you will be selected, we might have a session next year on how to handle interview questions. One of the interview questions people who've been to that stage is, why do you want to study in the UK? And basically is they're looking for two reasons why you want to study in the UK, and people go for very obvious reasons. And there are the reasons, some people say, I want to study in the UK, let's say because my course doesn't exist in my country. You're not supposed to put your country in bad light. You'd rather go, things like the UK masters courses is, they're 1 year, all those kind of things, because that's an advantage. Other countries are like 2 years. So, but to conclude, for the studying in the UK essay, you need to be very direct to the point. A conclusion of one sentence, two sentence, why you want to study in the UK, and especially that the program you selected. um Again, there are people who want to talk about so much what they have learned before, what their undergraduates were, and for me, I feel like they already have your CV, so that's not adding value. They actually want to know you've researched your courses. So focus on that. Focus on showing us, or showing why you selected those universities or those courses. So I'll go now to my final essay, which is the career plan. Career plan is all about dreaming, and so it's not things you've achieved before. So that should be easy. But ideally, also either people are not dreaming enough, because I've reviewed essays before, and I asked someone, "Do you really think Chevening will give you, I will award you a scholarship if you want to come back to the same organization you're working for right now, and you're not showing any change, that like you'll approach challenges differently? Then why do you want the scholarship? Why would Chevening give you the scholarship if you really want to come back and become a volunteer as a teacher? You can volunteer as a teacher right now. So you need to think of, you need to be ambitious. Chevening is looking for leaders. If you look at the reports, and you can Google the Chevening reports, like I think when they were celebrating the 40th year since the scholarship was started, and see the great things Cheveners are doing in their countries, then you'll be like, you need to question your dreams first if you really want to apply the scholarship. So number one, think of smart. A career plan should be specific, should be measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So, and then it should be progressive. So you need to show you're moving from a lower position to a higher position to a higher position. Again, divide it into three. So have a short-term career plan, have a medium-term career plan, and a long-term career plan. These terms are also vague. For me, what I considered short-term was anything 2 years after I came back. Medium term was 3 years to 7 years or 10. And then after whatever happens after 10 years or after the seventh year, since getting the scholarship was my long term plan. But that's not important. No one is telling you to talk about details such as years. Just use the terms in the short term, medium term, and long term. So, um, the general idea of writing a career plan essay is, think of an organization you want to work for, and a real position that exists, and stick to that. Some of the essays that are not so good, people say, I want to become a senior officer in the Ministry of Finance. What is a senior officer in the Ministry of Finance? I want to become a senior employee of the United Nations. What is a senior employee in the office in the United Nations? Remember to be very specific. Some people also say, I want to be A or B. It is very specific. I want to be A, like very convincing. So, mine was like, first of all, I introduced my career. So, and again, the introduction for career and the studying in the UKSA are almost similar, because you are justifying why you want to have a career in human rights. Assuming when you do an MSc in human rights, sorry, an LLM in human rights, you want to work in the human rights field or whatever. So you need to just, again, it's a similar introduction. So kind of, but do not use the same statistics, do not use the same, but ideally it's the same argument. Oh, there is food insecurity in my country. So I want to pursue a career in, a career that involves solving food insecurity. That's the kind of general idea that for me I would really advocate for. And then from there, I would say in the short term, for me it was coming back and starting a community-based organization that would focus on helping small scale farmers commercialize their agricultural activities. This would mean training them on issues to do with bookkeeping, good agricultural practices, and I can link that to all the things that I would have done in my masters using the skills. And then think of 3 objectives that you want to pursue in that career plan, and who you are going to partner with to achieve that, and why these these objectives are. Think of a big goal. Sometimes I think of what's the main thing, what's the main objective of all this. So for me, I mentioned other working with other financial institutions that give loans to farmers, working with the state government or county government, local government, whatever you call it in your country, because you are working together with them, working with farmers cooperatives. So because you're also showing that this is not a one-man show, you want to work with other people. So for example, if you want to become the director of public health in your country, who are you going to work with? There are a lot of organizations that are really linked, in that sector. So you explain what exactly you want to do. 3 things. For me, it was more of training farmers on good agricultural practices, issues to do with bookkeeping, and conservation agriculture, which is really important for places that are not receiving enough rainfall. And then from there, I would say, in order to maybe increase incomes of small scale farmers, and also improve food security. Uh, this CBO for me, community based organization, was to operate only in my county. Uh, and I'll tell you now why in my county, because you have to think of the scope. Then, in the medium term, for me, I wanted to go to politics. So to become a member of parliament. No, sorry. In the medium term, I wanted to become to join the local government as a minister for agriculture. Local government, not national. So local governments have capability of doing big things. So for me, I talked about um, things like digging boreholes, because that is digging farm. I mean, local governments can dig boreholes, irrigation schemes. I talked about employing more extension officers to help farmers. Uh, and not so many lists. And you can Google even the office that you want to or the career plan you want to follow. Look at the job description and pick 3 things from there and tune them into your essays. A thing that already is existing, an office that already exists. And then from there, I would say, why are all these things important? Again, it's to enhance the incomes on smallholders and improve food security, in the county. Remember, in the county. In the long, oh, and then because now I'm in government, who will I work with? Number one, I'll work with the county assembly, which is like the local parliament, because a minister is in the executive arm of the local government. So you'll work with the county assembly, because like the parliament, because they make laws. You'll work closely with NGOs, because there are a lot of partnerships between NGOs, including development partners, uh, projects that are already taking place. You'll also be working together with research institutions, including universities. So you need to think of three things you want to achieve in that career plan and who you are going to work with, and what's the big goal, which is again food security and enhancing incomes. The in the long term, I said I wanted to become the member of parliament for my constituency. A member of parliament is a national, now the national parliament, where laws about every law is made in the country. So why that progression? My idea was now to go and replicate what had worked in the county lower level of government in the national government, making laws that would improve food security in the country. I would also said I plan to chair. There are various committees in the Kenya National Assembly, and one of them is agriculture, cooperatives, and what marketing? Can't remember. But one of that committee also handles stuff with trade deals. So, and I said, in as a chair of this committee, I'll be in the team negotiating our trade deals, including trade deals with the United Kingdom, which is one of our biggest trading partners. And I said, and this will foster relations between Kenya and the UK. And I knew that really hit the right place. Those who know about Chevening, which was started in 1980s, the main reason was actually to foster relations between the UK and the countries where the scholars would come from. So if there's a way of collaboration in your career plan, you don't need to overuse it, but just use it once. So for me, I said at the point where I talked about trade between Kenya and the UK, I said, and this will foster relations between Kenya and the UK, because already we trade a lot in terms of tea, coffee, and other things, agricultural products. So again, in this essay, think of three things. Think of a position. Don't say if there's a position called senior government advisor in your country, then you can use it. But for me, I'm looking for in the long term, I want to become the minister of finance in Nigeria. In this role, what is the role of the minister of finance in your country? Then pick three things and connect them to what you'll have learned and how they're going to and who you'll work with and what is the big goal. So for me, the big goal was actually Vision 2030, which is our national blueprint for development, and also the SDGs. And if you can mention SDGs at the end in your career plan, because either you are just talking about health, education, food security, everything fits in one of few SDGs. So you can talk about SDGs, and that will be great. You can get more details from my blog. I'm sure you can find it in the description of this channel. And now you can start posting your questions to the channel, to the chat, and I'll pick them, and hopefully I'll be able to answer all of them. Um, as I now talk about my what I did after applying for Chevening. So as you post your questions, I'll just spend a few minutes to give you something. For me, when I wrote my Chevening essays, I had an aha moment. Had an aha moment. Was like, wow, I could do this actually. Remember, this is a BCom graduate writing essays to do with food insecurity. But after not being successful in the elections, I had gone into business of supplying food, fresh agricultural produce to hotels in one of the coastal cities. And I had seen stuff coming from Tanzania, which really inspired me because I was like, wow, we can't even produce enough onions in my country. We're getting onions from Tanzania. What is wrong? Our cost of production was actually wrong because of taxes, because, I started thinking big. And that's what led to me thinking of Chevening. So what I did afterwards, after submitting my essays, I we had a government that had come in 2017, 2018, and I was writing these essays in November 2018. So, and the government had established something called the Big Four agenda. One was affordable housing, the other one was agricultural food security, if I can remember. The other one was universal healthcare, and the other one was manufacturing. So I went to I didn't even have a blog by then. I went to and wrote an article using my phone, and I said why Uhuru, now the president by then, needs to prioritize agriculture. And I argued we didn't need affordable housing because if you if you change the fundamentals of agricultural um, production, people gonna do their housing by themselves. If you enhance agriculture, the backbone of our economy. I also argued that we really didn't need the whole issue of housing. The one of the issues of solving health issues in my country was actually nutrition. Because if you look at every country, and especially developing countries, everything starts in nutrition. Children are not eating enough, or they have double or triple burden of malnutrition. Those people who are familiar with public health nutrition, and if people eat right, believe you me, I'm sure 50% of the health budgets in our country would be cut because you won't have the issues about hypertension and all the queues people have waiting for services. Because when people eat right, they have less diseases. And then I also argued why manufacturing wouldn't work in Kenya because we are an agricultural country. So unless we make our agriculture the backbone and start producing more and start manufacturing our agricultural products, then we can't really say we want to become a manufacturing nation without thinking what do we want to manufacture in the first place, and which our main thing would have been agri. So I argued this, and I was like, after writing the article, I was like, wow, instead of putting this in I didn't have a blog. Then I was like, let me even start a blog. At that moment, I started a blog, and then that was my first essay. Sorry, my first article in the blog. Then something hit me. What if I send it to the newspaper? So I went to an old newspaper and looked at the email address, and I sent it to the Daily Nation, the top newspaper in Kenya. And then I think it was on a Thursday. And then on a Sunday, someone tells me, oh, you wrote something for the Nation. I'm like, I can't remember when. Then the whole article was there. And then I was like, oh, maybe I could be writing articles. So it was like one thing leading to the other. And then I was like, okay. Then I started thinking to write articles, I need to research them. So I started doing research. So I wanted to talk about, I would see people visiting farms like agritourism, and I'll be like, wow, that's potential. So where you're growing things, or you have a model farm of, let's say, whatever you grow or whatever you're keeping livestock, and people would visit you and pay. So you're making money from your agricultural activities, but you're also making money from hosting people. And in some places, people can be allowed to milk cows or do whatever, pick fruit, all those kind of things, especially people from the city who are not familiar with things in the agricultural rich or rural areas. So I would go and write an article, the potential about agritourism. Or let's say I would talk about things to do with criticize, let's say, the budget, and say, it's not enough for agriculture. So I started writing these articles, and then this is happening after I have submitted my essays. So when I was shortlisted, um, when you're invited for your interview, they only need you to go with an identification document. So either your ID, your driving license, or your passports. So when I went, I was like, wow. I photocopied my articles. There were 12, now published in three different newspapers. The three main newspapers, I would send to many, and then they would be maybe now published in one. By the way, let me tell you, Chevening really likes to hear someone who's been published, or someone who's been invited for a TV, to do, because it's a big thing. It's a big thing for people here. Not everyone gets invited to say anything on TV, or someone who gets published on newspapers. So I I went and said, oh, and I told them, oh, by the way, my since I wrote these essays, I've been published in the newspapers. And they were like, oh, let's see them. They were really interested to see what I had written in the newspapers. And again, I had used those evidence while again applying for my courses afterwards. So you can see how one thing led to another, and everything fitted in. And remember, this is happening after submitting essays. Nothing had happened before. So, and also, because I've said about university application, when you're choosing your courses, remember, number one, look at your ability. So for example, UK is very easy to transition. So as long as, especially for social sciences, you only need to demonstrate that you can read and write. So You can even do an LLM and you don't have a background in law. The only thing you need to write now a good motivational statement, a good personal statement, showing, and you can, there are videos I've made on how to write a good personal statement for university application, and you can also find more resources online. So to cut the long story short, um we can plan life as much as we can, but there is a law that happens depending on how you take an opportunity that lands on your table that day. Not everything can be planned. So yes, I wanted to do a PhD, but I never planned to do a PhD at the University of Greenwich. So, but I positioned myself right. So, and I landed at the University of Greenwich. If you ask me today, what do you want to do after your PhD? I'm like, I really don't know, because I mean, I have a general idea what I want to do, but it could be, I don't know. There are things now I'm doing sidelines, and they could lead to big things. So, and that could be interesting. So it's not cast in stone. So whatever you do with this information, and that's the reason why for me I don't believe in the word motivation. It's not, it doesn't appear anywhere whatever I write. I mean, I'm like, no, I only know about inspiration because inspiration leads to action. So if you are watching this video, what are you going to do about it? For me, that's the main thing. What are you going to do about this? So, how are you going to write good essays? So that's the end. I'm gonna start taking your questions now. So I'll go from the chat and see where you started. Can I see them? Wow. Yes, I can see them. So think of organizations, real organizations that exist. Be specific, very convincing. Yeah, that's someone, I guess Agatha is talking about, what I was saying. Yeah, things that exist. Don't say you want to join the United Nations. As what? Is it a resident director? Is it the director general? Whatever. Be very specific and know what that role exactly does, so that you can link your examples. My goal for short term is to continue working with INGOs. Okay, related, where I will be able to apply the knowledge I gained from my master into transforming the project that implemented. I really don't understand what you mean by the project that implemented, but what I would say, if you really want to continue working in the same organization, please say say like, "M- my short-term goal is to come back to X organization I have been working and seek promotion to be the director of this and this," and then start explaining what you'll do in that position and who you'll network with or who you'll partner with in order to achieve those objectives you've discussed you want to do. And then, what do these objectives lead to? Like, what's the main goal, the big goal? So there's nothing wrong coming back to the same organization, but please make sure that you're saying you'll seek promotion and become something big, and be very, very specific on what you mean by that organization, by that position. Would you recommend choosing similar courses from the same university to increase your chances, or would you recommend spreading them out to different universities? To be honest, Chevening really doesn't look at. Chevening is looking for convincing essays. And are there really related courses in the same university? I would really question that. Yes, they are there because some of them just vary by the electives. So, for example, the MSc Agriculture and Development at the University of Reading and the MSc Applied International Development. The difference is the applied does not have courses in the agriculture courses. So they have modules, modules like social policy or something, and then the agriculture and development has, they have similar core modules, and then there are electives. So would you say those courses are related? I would actually say no, they are not related. So so for me, I would really say go for courses that are really speaking to your career plan. Go for courses that are speaking to your career plan. And I keep on saying the only way you can know a course is useful is by looking at the modules, not the title. One of the key examples I've given before is the MSc Food Security at the University of Warwick and the MSc Food Security at the University of Reading. The MSc Security at the MSc Food Security at the University of Warwick is a very scientific course, natural science, talking about biotechnology and all those GMO stuff. But the MSc Food Security at the University of Reading is very social, is based on social science, how to address food security issues in terms of places that have conflict, or how to address food security issues in places that have, let's say, natural disasters like flooding. So, would you say MSc Food Security at Warwick and Reading are the same? No. So if you're actually from a social science background and you want to understand how to look at food security issues uh, in that context, then Reading. If you're really a science person, natural science, and you're really into stuff to do with biotech or all those scientific stuff, then that's the reason why I would say go and research your courses and see the modules, whether those modules are speaking to your career. Modules, modules will tell you the story. Um, do I need to mention specific organization, for instance, that I'm currently working, or just keep it general? Um, if you want, if your career plan involves coming back to the organization you're currently in, then you need to mention it. Otherwise, but if it doesn't need to come up, as long as, or if it is one of the examples like leadership. So if you're working at a place and you want to give that place as an example, or maybe your leadership example talks about how you solve a challenge in your company and you work there, then you can mention it. Otherwise, don't just mention it for the sake. Mention it where it fits. Um, some of the universities seem to have increased their tuition fee from last year. Will this reflect in the scholarship financial cap? So the only Chevening covers everything. The only cap is for MBA courses. I don't know currently what the cap is, but there is a cap for MBA courses. So, but if you get selected, so I'll give you an example. The Masters in Public Policy at the University of Oxford, MPP, public policy is actually over £50,000 per year. And there's no difference between home students and international students. Everyone pays over £50,000. Most universities, their courses are around £26,000 or 27. The MBA is capped. I think during our year was 22,000. So if you are applying for an MBA, just go to the Chevening website and confirm the cap. Chevening won't pay any for MBA, but everything else, Chevening pays everything. So tuition fees is the last of your worry here. Don't think about that. So I think I've answered that if I understood that question correctly. Um, Liz from Kenya, field of study microbiology, planning to MSc epidemiology. So that's not a question. I have chosen MSc in food security at Edinburgh, the MSc in Agriculture and Development at Reading, and MSc in Sustainable Agriculture and Food Security at Newcastle. Um, I really wouldn't take very specific questions on this one, but because I know about food security courses, again, look at the modules. Again, the modules will tell you. For me, I wouldn't tell until you look at the modules and see whether those modules are adding up to your career plan or the skills you want to gain. So, and again, one thing I would mention is probably of other scholarships. So some universities why I would really recommend. For example, if you apply to Reading, I think there are a few African countries. There is a scholarship called Marshall Papworth. I don't know that it still exists. You can Google for agriculture courses. So applying to Reading and I think the other Royal Agricultural Uni and some other universities, there's a possibility that when you get an offer, they'll write you an email tell you, oh, there's another scholarship here you can apply for. The other thing is that look for other scholarships. Again, if you applied for Commonwealth, the offers you got there, you can still use them for Chevening. You can submit as long as Chevening just wants an offer. The other thing I would mention about the courses is that also there is also the Joint Japan World Bank scholarships. Yes, and I think Reading is one of them. So please check those ones. I really advocate people applying for as many scholarships as possible to increase your chances of getting into one. But that you'll only know that if you Google the scholarships and see that that course is eligible. Hello, Sam. It's fine. Is it fine to have two examples from both leadership and networking essay? What do you mean? I really said you need three. But obviously, if you don't have a third one, I don't know what you can do. Maybe try and give more details to the two. But for me, I would go for three. Another question is when selecting the course of studies, is fine to just select same course, example AI. So, but AI is so general, so you still need to go and look at the modules again. So I'm speaking of modules. I'm not speaking of general field. So, uh, if you check some courses on human rights, like LLM human rights, you'll find them are also very different based on the modules. So go to the modules and see whether the modules are similar. That's the only way you can know whether those courses are the same. And obviously there'll be slight differences. Uh, as I've given you an example of MSc Food Security at Warwick and Reading. I have a background in software engineering, and based on my personal experiences with my brother who is disabled, I wanted to do a program that's yes speaks to my career, but also want to touch on. I think you want to touch on something to disability. So well, I don't know why you want to where you want to bring about it, but probably have you been involved in like community staff that really discuss the experiences of people who have disability, or have you because that's where you could use it in terms of leadership. It should be a community staff that you've done something related to disability in your community. Uh, Obviously, I'm also like I don't know where else you can use it, but for me, that's or maybe in your career you want to develop stuff. Maybe you've written about developing stuff like softwares or something. And sorry if I don't understand what a software engineer does, but would you really also would it also be apply developing stuff with people with disabilities in mind? So there is two way. Either use that as an example of things you've done in your community based on your experience, uh, or go back and use the same about disability in terms of the products you develop as a software engineer. Um, what is the difference between Chevening partner universities and the rest? So very valid questions, and it confuses people every year. So ideally, Chevening contributes 80% of your tuition fee, and then the university pays 20%. That's what partnership means. In other situations, some universities contribute 100%. So Chevening only pays your living, um, your living, um, whatever expenses. So that partnership ranges from a university contributing your fee, tuition fee, and ideally the university providing 20% just means giving a discount because it's like paying themselves. It's like providing a discount, right? So Chevening only pays 80%. So not all universities are in that arrangement. Some universities have nothing to do with. So Chevening, once selected, Chevening pays 100% your tuition fee, everything, and also contributes your living expenses. Does that affect universities you apply for? No. Once you're selected, you're selected. And you'll never know what contribution your university is giving until in your final award letter. Your final award letter states, because this arrangement changes a lot. Some universities can even pay half, others. So it's always the minimum they pay is 80. Sorry, it's 20, and the Chevening pays 80%. So a lot of people struggle to look for universities which are partners. For me, I didn't even look at that list. I went and applied for what I wanted. Just apply for the course you want. Don't even care about Chevening partnering universities. The only thing I would say is if you don't get your first choice, you can always go to your second choice. So, one of the, and I need to mention this, one of the people who approached me last year, they got selected, but they didn't have university offers. Yes, it's possible to get selected and you've not been accepted by university because and I mean, go back to the videos I've made about your university, how to select your universities and how to write good personal statements. So that's the only, as long as you have an offer, don't worry about it. And then the other thing is, remember, you can change your universities at the interview stage. So right now, if you feel like, I think for me, I had like ten university offers or more, because eventually I got selected for Commonwealth, um, at yes, Warwick, and I got selected for Marshall Papworth at Royal Agricultural Uni, and I got Chevening at Reading. Obviously, I preferred Reading. I preferred Chevening, but what that means is that all these offers, because I had them very early on in before even going for my interview, I would have walked to the Chevening interview and changed and changed them over. In fact, my first choice wasn't even MSc Agriculture and Development. I changed it at the interview stage. You're allowed to do that. So for me, I would get worried. I mean, what would worry you right now, please, is writing essays that stand out. Write essays that stand out. Once you submit your application on 5th or 4th, then start thinking about applying to your universities and writing good personal statements and focus on getting those 3 offers. So I think I've answered the question on partner universities. It should not be an issue, a big issue for you. Yeah. There was a rumor in my ear that some people are told that the university is not a partner uni and Chevening didn't have enough funds, those kind of rumors, but they were just rumors. You know, as long as you have 3 offers, you can just go to that second one or the third one, because people change their options all the time. In fact, when you get the offer letter, once selected, they tell you to confirm the university because they already know you submitted 3 at the interview stage, which you cannot change now after the interview. I want to go back to what you did talk about, thinking of positions that already exist in the goal. That was a good tip because I'm thinking I would like to change how things work, but my ideas are too general. Go back to the description. So if you want to become the director general of, like, let's say, National Environment Management Authority in your country, you could go and Google and see what their job involves, and then start structuring how you write your career plan. What's not happening in your country in terms of environment, and that agency could do. And then, if you want to become a minister, if you want to become a, the, think of something that already exists, because you can draw on the job description to pick 3 things that you think there is a gap, and the skills you'll gain or your career in that field will actually change, will actually change. um um have had to go back to my study in the UK essay after you talked about it. Yes, go back to your essays. This session was about refining your essays. So go back and look at them and ask yourself every sentence, what am I saying here? Because there is a lot of people saying stuff that are not answering any chevening stuff. Um, I was looking at the essays of someone last year, and they want to talk about their networking example, and then they started describing that person, you know, that person they met, how good that person is. Does it add value? No, it doesn't add value to the essay. What adds value is how you benefited from that person, how, and how you approach that person, but not describing that person. You mentioning that person and their title is enough, the name and the title, and where you met them, and the context. Um, my long-term goal is to become the director of Uganda Virus Institute, influencing in policy making on tackling deadly diseases in Africa, but requires PhD. Is it smart? Well, um, I would say, well, your long-term plan would then mean getting a PhD, and then you need to specify the PhD. That means you have to think a lot, because, and then say, my long-term plan is to become the director of, that's how actually you should start it. My long-term plan is to become the director of Uganda Virus Institute. Um, what is influencing policy, by the way? To me, it's vague. So you need to say, what does that mean? In this role, I will. do A, B, C, D. You need to list three things. Influencing policy is not a thing. So for me, it would be maybe, I'm sure there is a bit of research there happening a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of recommendations coming from that. And, what lessons we learned from COVID and all that means preparedness for such viruses. So, those kind of things. And partnering with Africa CDC program. Africa CDC, whoever is writing that question, look for Africa Center for Disease Control. I think it's based at the AU. You could look at if you want to, but obviously for me, I'm always cautious for people who want to take the academic journey in their long-term career plans because it's there is always an ish about going to academia in your Chevening essays. So think through it, because the only way you can justify you want to go to long-term academia is in to academia in the long term is like if there's a shortage of that that PhDs in that sector. Let's say we don't have PhDs in virology in Uganda. So then you'd say, then, well, this is a gap, and that's the reason I want to do a PhD in the long term, and then become the director of this Uganda Virus Institute. But again, don't start with doing a PhD. Start with the career plan. Start with the career plan. And if Chevening doesn't know you need a PhD, you don't need to mention it. Just say you want to become the director of that Uganda Virus Institute, and then start explaining all the things you'll do and how you'll partner with other countries. Because of course, viruses need you need to partner with your neighbors. A lot of stuff, a lot of countries that border you. You need to partner with all the global organizations doing research on viruses, and there you can talk about how you'll partner with the UK, because I'm sure they also have a lot of things they could partner with Uganda, and that will foster relations between the two countries. Think of UKRI, and I think there must be a body that also looks at viruses here in the UK. Um, the issue is, again, is not putting your country like we don't have this. I've read essays where people say, oh, my country doesn't have this. Don't put your country in bad light. Put them on equal basis. We want to collaborate. We want to partner. Um, the other question is is it mandatory to be in a political party to be selected or to be involved in an NGO or an association? No, it's not. But you must demonstrate leadership and you must show that you have networking skills that can benefit you and other people who surround you, and that you know what exactly you want to do in the UK in terms of courses and how those courses link to what you want to do in the future. And you must demonstrate you know exactly what you want to do in the future and what is the ultimate goal of doing those things. So basically, I'm saying that those things you've listed there might be, but they are not necessarily what. Was I in a political party? How would even Chevening know I was in a political party? They don't. They don't have details. Not everyone has worked for an NGO. I had not worked for an NGO myself. You know, an association. What do you mean by an association? For me, I look for leadership can be demonstrated in various forms. If you started in this session and I talked about your workplace, out there, community, those people who've started initiatives to talk about climate change in their communities, planting trees, mentoring girls, all those things, awareness on various issues, human rights. Well, that's leadership. And sometimes leadership is not about position. Again, you have to demonstrate that. And I think I've exhausted so much time talking about the leadership essay. I have chosen 3 courses in universities, but I didn't apply for the courses. Just apply for Chevening. Well, it's still safe right now because even if you don't get accepted by those 3 universities, you have time until you get selected to at least by the time you go for your interview, make sure you have an offer. By the time you go for your interview, please make sure you have an offer accepted. And if, assuming you have one and it's not the ones you submitted, please change and make that one the top one. You don't have to change all of them. Just make sure that once you go to the interview, submit one of the offers that you'll already have. Assuming you applied for 3 universities right now and you're invited for your interview in March or April, And when you're going for the interview, the three universities you submitted in your essays have not selected you, but you have another four universities you added somewhere and you have the offer. I would go to the interview and say, "Oh, I wish to change the order of my courses. I want to introduce this course and I want to make it my first choice." And when you go for your interviews, don't necessarily say that you haven't gotten the offers. Just say you have applied, even if you've not been accepted and you've gotten feedback that you've not been accepted. Just say you've applied. I'll tell you, Chevening doesn't come in how you apply to your universities. So these are separate process. So Chevening just once they read your essays and you've convinced them, then they just need you to submit an offer. Either three of the ones you applied, or if it's during the interview, you can change. Um, I want to assume that's the last question because I haven't seen anyone, but I'll give you a few seconds to think if you have anything else you would want to ask. Please do like this video. The algorithm really works. It will suggest it to other people and share it with your colleagues. And if you follow me on LinkedIn is my primary social media platform where I connect with so many people, and I'm active on LinkedIn more than any other place. Um, and also, I wish you well in your application, and let's meet next year. If selected, I'll have a session on how to handle the interview. Meanwhile, I have so many resources for you in the channel, including very short videos on each of the each of the essays, and also some very long sessions that I had last year and the year before. Thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you here, and I wish you all the best in your application. May you be inspired and may you be successful. Thank you very much.